Story 1. The Old School Night Nurse. This all happened when I was 13. Things weren't great at home, and I drifted into the habit of going out very late most nights and just walking aimlessly around, exploring the pretty dull town in which I grew up. My parents went to bed early since they had actual responsibilities, so it was pretty easy say I was going to watch TV at a friend's house and stay out till the small hours, creeping into bed after midnight. There was a girl in my classes called Janet, who I didn't think had ever even noticed me previously. She was stunningly attractive and witty and warm and generally perfect, and I was very much invisible to girls, invisible to most people. In fact, don't ask me how this came about, as I am unsure myself, but we began to meet up on some of these nocturnal excursions. Though we were never more than friends, I guess she must have been a fellow Itau, or maybe she was just bored like I was. I had no idea how to talk to girls, but I must have done something right, as somehow she seemed to like me, though I am hardly what you would call a ladies' man. I sure as hell liked her. We got into a routine whereby she slipped me a note in school with something scribbled like "Meet me by the shop at 9 o'clock, CK," and we'd hang around in the dark and talk about dumb things. It was the sort of town where everything shut down at night, and so we had the roads, parks, and cemetery to ourselves. She'd show me the house she grew up in, and I'd tell her about some local ghosts and legends that I'd half invented myself. We'd usually gravitate towards our school, which is surrounded now by a 7-foot chain-link fence. Like a concentration camp, but in those days anyone could wander around the paths and grounds, with a big playing field and forest at the rear. There were benches and bike sheds if we needed to rest or shelter. We were still just about young enough to have a good time without cigarettes and alcohol. So one night we had arranged to meet as normal, and I stood over the road from the corner shop that was the only place in town still open so late, sorta watching from the shadows, as sometimes one of the staff would see me and storm outside to tell me to get lost. But Janet never showed, which was the first time. I gave her another hour and left pretty hurt and angry, which in hindsight was an overreaction. In all probability she'd wanted to come meet me, but maybe her parents had stopped her or something had come up. Neither of us could afford a mobile phone, which were still for the rich kids back then. I couldn't really hang around waiting any longer anyway, as it was October and cold enough so that even an indestructible teen like me could feel the chill. I wandered aimlessly until about midnight, when I wound up sat on an old bench overlooking our school, at the top of some long, gradual steps which led down to one of several entrances to the sprawling school structures. I was miserable and dejected and could see my own breath, for like an idiot I was always underdressed for the cold British weather, with only a thin sports jacket over a t-shirt. I was one of those kids who never needed much of a shove to sulk and strop. So I sat and ivored and felt sorry for myself. Thoughts flashed through my head of suicide or self-harm, until I noticed there was a light on at the bottom of the steps, which, strangely, I hadn't noticed earlier. The dim light shone through a small window and a door which led into the school science block. This was bizarre. No one should have been inside the school at this hour. I sometimes stayed late with a detention, and even a couple of hours after the students left for the day. There were no cleaners or teachers left around. The place was eerily deserted and as quiet as the grave. I decided to go and have a closer look. I don't think I would have done if I wasn't in such a lousy mood. I guess I figured that the evening would not get any worse. So I made my way down the steps to the pale yellow glow which seemed comforting, like a sanctuary from everything wrong with the world. My curiosity was off the scale, too. Maybe this something exciting like a robbery in progress or some older kids who'd broke in looking for someplace warm to get. Hi, the door to the school wasn't locked, and I saw the light was coming from another door leading to a room beneath some stairs. Why, CH I hadn't ever really noticed before. I cautiously entered into a nurse's station of sorts, a small room with a couple of old battered school chairs and a mirror on the walk over a sink. It was stiflingly warm inside, though I saw no radiator and heard no heater. There were a couple of ancient yellowing posters on the walls about not passing on flu germs or something similar. Just before I announced my presence, a lady appeared in a small alcove and asked how she could help. I told her I had seen the light and followed my feet. I realized my thoughts of death and dismemberment were draining, and felt too foolish to tell her of such things. She had a manner about her which screamed that the only love she gave was of the tough variety. So I said I wasn't sure what I wanted, and politely inquired about her presence. She told me she was always there at night as a crisis nurse, without going into specifics, and I was too shy to ask any more questions. It was a small town, and the school also acted as kind of a community center too, serving as a voting station and blood donation center, that sort of thing. So to my naive 13-year-old mind, her story sort of checked out. She was tiny, literally 4 feet tall, and dressed like someone from the Salvation Army, with a khaki shirt and shorts, old-fashioned sandals, and a dark crimson sash around her stocky chest. I never once saw her smile, but didn't really see this as strange or unfriendly until I thought about it later. Also reflecting on how her language was cold for a nurse. They always call you love or dear, ask nice friendly questions, and seem to want to talk. Enjoy it even. Her attitude was formal and businesslike. There was an awkward silence before she suggested that I must have known why D arrived there, so I said that I guessed I lacked direction, which was a stupid thing to say, but it seemed appropriate somehow. She said she was part of a team who people could turn to when they felt alone or undervalued. Showing no emotion, she began to speak of pills which might help. I mumbled some vague agreement, a little bewildered as I knew nothing really of medication back then, and she disappeared back around the corner from where she had first emerged. I could hear cupboards and drawers opening and tablets rattling in plastic jars. She told me she had just the thing to make me feel better and spoke of doses and such like. But while she was talking in her low, soft and slightly gravelly voice, I began to pay attention to my growing sense of dread. It dawned on me that I did not like this woman at all. Something was very wrong with the entire situation. Worse, I sensed that I was in real danger there, and that I had to leave immediately. So, while she was still in the back, rummaging and muttering, I slipped straight out the door and hurried home to bed. not looking back once. I have no more memories of that night. When I awoke the what hour, all things seemed unreal, with my recollection rapidly disintegrating, details vague like in my dreams. I probably would have dismissed the whole thing as some bad nightmare if it were not for the breaking news at school that morning. Janet had vanished. In the night, she had gone out to meet someone and never returned. Everyone was talking about it. The speculation was predictably ridiculous, a smorgasbord of half-baked theories and vindictive gossip. They held an emergency assembly for everyone in our year, with the police officer stowed on the stage urging us to come forward if we knew or heard of anything even vaguely strange or suspicious. Afterwards, officers spoke privately to some of Janet's closest friends. She had quite a few. She was always very well liked of ours. They didn't bother speaking to me, as no one had a clue about our late-night rendezvous. In fact, no one even knew I existed. I did wonder if anyone would have even believed me if I had come forward to say that I'd been meeting with Janet. I probably would have been dismissed as an attention seeker, or maybe they'd have seen me as the prime suspect. Weird shamble. Misanthrope meets popular pretty girl. The thought did cross my mind, and how could I have told anybody about what had happened to me that very same night? They'd have pegged me as insane and thrown me to the wolves. One way or another, strangely enough, Janet was very rarely mentioned by anyone again afterwards. No anniversaries were marked. Her close friends quickly began to talk about other things. A couple of weeks and things were back to normal, except about a year later. One of our teachers took down some old posters, and beneath one was a bright scribble in permanent marker pen about Janet. Some stupid insult. The teacher froze for a few moments, then remarked quietly on how she couldn't remember Janet's surname. Then she dismissed the whole thing and carried on with our day. I turned around to look back at the rest of the class, but no one else was even listening. That was the last time I heard anyone say her name. She has seemingly ceased to exist, which is strange to say the least. The police seemed to drop the case pretty soon, and an internet search throws up no record of her at all. I have no way of knowing if she got mixed up with the weird old woman I encountered that night, but the whole thing seems too bizarre to be coincidental. But for all I know, Janet ran away to join the circus. It is maddeningly vague. I did discreetly ask if the school and some sort of late-night therapy service for troubled teens, but you can probably guess the answer. I really should have gone and said something to Janet's parents, as I considered myself at least partly responsible for her disappearance, but I was far too immature and awkward to ever have confronted them. What a total wimp. And that is the end of the story. The end of Janet. I guess I've since moved to a new town, but sometimes I return to revisit the places where me and Janet would go to on those few fleeting late summer nights. The school is still there. It's been pretty heavily redeveloped in recent years. Every part seems totally different except for those long, gradual steps down to the old science block I walk past every once in a while, and I stand above those steps and stare down at the school, and I still wonder what the hell happened. Story 2. If I had the sight to see all the things that troubled me, I was tossing and turning in my bed, and even after a long day at work, I couldn't get to sleep. It wasn't a lack of space. My bed was king size and I slept alone, but there was something that felt strange and uneasy. For example, I always sleep with the window open to allow the wind to come in and provide some chill in these warm summer nights. But on this particular night, there was no wind, and yet the trees were swaying harder than they'd swayed when the wind was there. I decided that there was no use in staying in bed if I couldn't sleep, but at the same time I didn't want to get up. I wasn't thirsty or hungry, and I didn't need the toilet, so I just turned the TV on and hoped that once I had watched enough crappy TV for that night I would fall asleep and turn the TV off. In the morning, there was nothing good on the TV. I flicked through a few channels, which made me feel sleepy on its own, but I had to settle for some cartoon, which I can't even remember the name of. I grabbed my phone to check the time. It was 1:04. Luckily, I didn't have to go to work in the morning, as it was my day off. But I still didn't like getting up late because I liked the mornings and going out for breakfast. At this rate, I probably wouldn't get enough sleep to even get a morning coffee at the local coffee shop. Asterisk, bang, 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 asterisk. 3 solid knocks a day, with the loudest knocks anyone could ever hope to hear. I always made sure that my doors were locked and the windows were shut. Whoever it was wasn't getting in without a key or someone opening it from inside. My heart was pounding from the volume and strength of the knocks. It felt like someone was trying to break the door down. Nonetheless, I got up from my bed and crept over to the landing. From up there, I could see the doorway, with street lights lighting all up my road. I could see outlines and shadows in the doorway even in the pitch-black darkness. Someone who knocked the tea hard obviously needed something, and yet when I looked down, I couldn't see anything, not even a silhouette. I decided it best not to call out. Perhaps it was one of my drunk neighbors knocking on their door. After all, I lived alone, and the walls were paper thin. I could hear their fridge running through a wall and a different floor, so it wasn't impossible that the knocks were for them. Asterisk, bang, 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 asterisk. 3 more knocks, as aggressive as the first, came pounding again. This time it was clear that it was on my door. My palms were sweating. My pajamas, combined with the warm night, made me feel sweaty and sticky. I wasn't scared, at least not until I went back to the landing. From up there, I looked down. Something was shaking the door handle viciously, and yet there was still no silhouette. What the hell could it be? A child not big enough to appear above the glass? No. What would a kid be doing pounding my door so hard? A drunk? Even then, I'd be able to see them. The door was clearly locked, as if it wasn't. Anyone shaking the handle would have got in. I rushed back into my bedroom and, like a little child, tried to hide under the covers. As I got my phone, I frantically dialed the police, even though nothing had really happened. My fingers were sweating, and I could hear the dial tone loud and clear. Rough the quietness of the night, now that the knocking had gone. Hello, emergency service. The door opened. Whatever was trying to get in had managed to break the handle and get in through the front door. They slammed the front door shut, and for a second I thought maybe it was a drunk neighbor playing around after having 10 too many drinks. Something was in my house with me, and I was too scared to face it. I even kept a baseball bat under my bed in case of intruders, but for some reason I was already frightened out of my wits. I clambered under my covers and waited for whatever it was to do what it was going to do. Asterisk, thud, thud, asterisk. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through my house. As the intruder came upstairs, I tried my best to control my breathing. Heavy breathing would give any position away, both through sound and in movement. I tried to nudge myself towards the wall as much as I could, as there was a slight gap between the wall and my bed, where if I was lucky, I could lodge myself in, just as I managed to position myself with the quilt ruffle so as to not look suspicious. My bedroom door creaked open slowly. If this was a funny joke, it was no longer funny. It hadn't been for a while, but the sudden reality had hit me. If it was someone I knew, they wouldn't have broken in or at all. East stated their identity, like, "Hey son, it's me," or "Yo bro, it's Jack." No, the thing was silent. And as I heard my door open, I did my best to lie as still as I could without exposing any part of my body. It was hard to breathe under the covers, but I had to keep my feet, hands, and head under or I'd be seen. The door hit the wall, and my visitor had either entered the room with me or gone somewhere else to scare me. The TV was still on, the crappy cartoon blaring out at a low volume, but in the silence of my breathing, it seemed as loud as the knocks I had heard earlier. I dared not look. The TV remote was on my bedside table, and I had my phone in my hand, thankfully disconnected from the 999 call. I didn't want them to think I was wasting their time. The results are in. Voting has now closed. Hold on. That was some reality TV show. I was watching a cartoon channel. My eyes widened and I almost screamed. But I remembered that any movement or noise, he would be my end. Something had changed the channel, and yet they were still oblivious that I was in the room with them. I must have been doing a good job keeping still, but who would just be R.E.A.K. into a house to watch a talent show? I had to see what was in the room with me. My phone showed that it was 1:12. 8 minutes had passed, but it seemed like an eternity. I had to make it discreet. Without making too much noise, I lifted the covers. I could see the door wide open on the far side of the room. The light from the TV blared across the room, almost blinding me after being in the darkness, but there was nothing standing in the doorway, nor by the door, thought, just as I lowered the covers. Something rustled by my bed. I don't own any pets, so it wasn't a cat or anything. The TV was still on, and I lifted the covers slowly. Again, the floor creaked slightly on one of the loose wood panels as my enemy walked across my field of sight and back out the door. Whatever it was, it was fucking with my mind. They broke in, came into my room, and sat by my feet, changed the channel, and then just got up to leave. The menacing figure came into view now, with the TV's light exposing it. This creature was of average height, with pale skin, and it walked with a sort of limp. I had never seen anything like it. It had long claws that resembled daggers. The legs were thin but somewhat muscly. The head was like that of a human's, but pale like the moon, with no hair and a few scratches. It had all but made it out of my doorway when it stopped in its T-Rex. I lowered the covers slightly so that I could still see him, but he could not see me, not in such lighting. Without even rotating its body, it turned its neck like an owl. I winced, still submerged under the covers out of fear. I was praying for him to leave, just fuck off. I was thinking throughout my head. but it wasn't going to make him leave sooner. Sweat dripped down my body, and I was almost shaking. I saw what came in my house, and I could do nothing but lie there or watch it. Curiosity killed the cat, but for some reason I still watched it. As its neck turned, I could start seeing the face. A cold chill filled the room, and it wasn't the wind. It was fear, and I saw it, the face of my fate. His mouth jagged with teeth of uneven shapes and sizes, but all sharp and threatening. His nose and ears pointy but also uneven. But it was the eyes that made me almost wet myself at the age of 24. The eyes were a bright orange, like the sun, though looking into them didn't blind me. We made eye contact. If I dropped the cover, he would see me. But I was almost shaking out of fear of sure death as I stared intently into the eyes. He almost scowled, then frowned, then turned his head slightly. He took a step towards the bed, his claws dangling from his arms. "This is it," I felt to myself, as I almost started crying. The creature was just about to open the covers and find me, but a sound from downstairs stopped it in its tracks. The neighbor's dog started barking, and the menacing creature ran out of my room, my eyes fixed on him as he pegged it outside. I heard my stairs trampled, and the front door slammed shut again with a broken handle. I was finally alone again. I couldn't stay in the house, though I had a busted door. I was close to shitting myself, and I was almost mincemeat for some pale zombie-like creature. I quickly changed clothes, still trembling. Once that was done, I put on me shoes and grabbed my car keys. I peered outside the front door to see if anyone was there, but it was clear. My car was only a few yards away from the garden path. If I could make it in there, I could drive away from anything pursuing me. I managed to make it. Thankfully, I didn't know where to go, but I drove. Far away from the house, banging kept going through my mind, as did the sound of the door handle. I was now no longer at all sleepy. I drove maybe a mile away when I saw a local hotel with its neon lights flickering in the distance. I decided that I would stay the night there and call the police from there. Fast forward to the payment. I'd bought a room for the night, and I had just managed to get inside. I rang the police, told them what had happened, and they said they would check the house, but wondered why I hadn't rang before I went to the hotel. I didn't know how to reply, but I thanked them with a sigh of relief and an uneasy smile. I needed to get some sleep, and that's where my story ends, in safety at a hotel. 3 floors up, with the police checking my house. It's 3:32, and I've written this account of M. Whitetail. Still somewhat shaken up. I also pray that none of you have to experience such a thing. Good night, bang bang bang, Story 3. How do you prove you are alive? I've been dead now for almost 5 weeks. It feels different than you might think, of course. I'm not really dead. If I were, I wouldn't be able to write this account of what happened to me. But legally, at least, I have been declared dead. Once you're dead, it's surprisingly difficult to prove you are alive. The event that caused my death took place 3 months ago. I was due to catch the late flight from Williamson Count Y Airport to St. Louis. Since leaving the Army, I've worked as an insurance claims investigator, and so my work takes me all over the U.S. I take upwards of 250 flights per year, so I end up in my fair share of tiny regional airports Williamson is small, but not the smallest I've been through. I got to the airport at 18 o'clock in plenty of time for the 21:45 flight. I grabbed a sandwich at the restaurant, tea, made some calls, and caught up on some admin. The airport was quiet, but there were enough people around to make what happened seem all the stranger. An announcement was made that my flight was delayed, a technical problem to blame. No stranger to delays, I just pulled out my Kindle and started on my latest book. I must have drifted off. "Excuse me, sir." What? I was startled into alertness. A very heavily made-up flight attendant stood over me, her overpowering perfume sweet, sticky, and cloying. "I'm sorry to trouble you, sir, but we are about to board the St. Louis flight." "Great, thanks." I looked around. Everyone else must have already got on the plane. The airport was deserted, lights off and shutters down, a ghost town. My watch told me it was 23:53, a lot later than I expected. When I boarded the flight, it was empty, completely empty. I have been on plenty of flights with just one or two other passengers before, but never a whole plane to myself. Ever officious, the flight attendant showed me to my seat, despite the obvious fact I could sit anywhere and it wouldn't matter. I hurriedly stowed my jacket and laptop case in the overhead compartment. She went through the farce of her safety demo whilst I had my head down reading my book. Takeoff was smooth, but as we reached a certain altitude I felt the familiar build-up of pressure in my ear and swallowed. Everyone knows the sensation of their ears popping. This was at once the same and yet completely different. "Sir, you need to fasten your seat belt." The words were clear, but the voice was insubstantial, a whisper. I turned around in the direction of the voice, expecting to see the flight attendant behind me. She wasn't there. I leaned into the aisle and I could see her at the front of the plane. I was only 6 rows back, so I guess I could have heard her voice from here. I was just so sure it came from behind me. I passed it off as some trick of the acoustics, my own heartbeat seeming to echo around the empty plane. But when I looked up, the seat belt sign wasn't on. I shrugged and went back to my book. Cruising was uneventful. The background hum of the air conditioning combined with my own tiredness and the subtle cabin lighting, giving a sleepy, dreamlike quality to the flight. As we began to descend, my ears popped again. "Excuse me, miss. What's happening?" A man's voice this time, again clear, but an ethereal whisper. The situation was beginning to feel very weird. I could see that there was no one else on the plan. "It's nothing to worry about, sir. If you can just stay calm and keep your seat belt on. It's just some turbulence." The plane had indeed begun to shake a little as the plane began its descent through the clouds. The voices gained substance. Others joined in. They were noisy now and nervous. "If everyone can please remain calm and seated." The flight attendant spoke loudly, trying to talk over the rising cacophony of panic questions. The whispers turned to screams and weeping pleas. Behind me I could hear a furious prayer, begging a merciless and hearing God not to let his faithful servant die so young. A life of promise unfulfilled. A mother wept as she tried to calm her crying baby, her soothing words unable to mask the terror in her voice. The pitch and intensity rose as the plane descended, the noise a maelstrom of competing sounds. "New arg, please." The wheels touched down and the voices quieted. I was hyperventilating, fingers digging painfully into the armrests. My brow slick with sweat, I hurried off the plane through the deserted airport, eventually slumping into bed in my nameless, faceless hotel room. Lying there in the still and quiet darkness, I rationalized it away. A panic attack, some one-off hit of anxiety about a landing I made dozens of times each month. I managed to convince myself, and I succumbed to the fatigue and slept. In my dreams I could hear moans of pain and anguish. Then silence. The morning brought a sense of normality. I got in the elevator down to Brea, fast. It's so cold. I whipped around at the faint whisper, already knowing no one was in the lift with me. As I drove to my next appointment, I heard the news about the crash on the Roddy. Of the hire car, a Cape Air flight, the morning plane, from Williamson County to St. Louis. There were no survivors from the 27 passengers on board. "Where are you?" The ghostly voice sounded like it came from the seat behind me, not the radio. I checked the rearview mirror, nothing, but I wanted to be sure. I almost veered the road, straining over my shoulder to look around the rear of the car. It was when I got back to St. Louis Airport that night that I realized I had lost my passport. I didn't need it for the internal flight, as my driving license would suffice, but it was a pain to have lost it. When I got home the next day, I rang the St. Louis hotel. They were sorry, but no passport had been found by housekeeping. I had showed it to board the Williamson flight, so the only other possibility was I had left it on the plane. The phone connected. "Hello, I think I may have left my passport on board a flight took 2 days ago. You should be here with us." "It's so cold," the whisper came echoing down the line. "What? I'm just transferring you to our lost property department, sir," the lady repeated. "Hello, Cape Air, lost property. How can I help you today?" "Hello, my name is Captain Lionel Sinclair. I think I may have left my passport on one of your flights 2 days ago." "Okay, sir. Which flight was that?" "The 2145 from Williamson to St. Louis, flight number 9K1114. Come and join us." "Pardon, I'm just checking our database now, sir." There was a long pause. I could hear the keyboard tapping. "Sir, could you please confirm the date of your flight again, please?" "Wednesday, the 21st of March, 2145 flight, Williamson to St. Louis, flight number 9K1114. I repeated. "I'm sorry, sir. Could you please hold? So cold here, and you are so warm." "Hello, is this Mr. Sinclair?" a new voice asked. "Captain Sinclair," I corrected impatiently. "I'm so sorry, Captain Sinclair. Can I place?" "He's just check the details of the flight you think you lost your passport on." "Of course," I said, barely trying to hide my frustration whilst I repeated the details. "Captain Sinclair, I'm afraid that flight was cancelled on March 21st due to a technical fault with the plane. It's not possible that you were on that flight. Could it have been another day? You should have been with us." "I'm not mistaken. I took that flight. I'm looking at my boarding card stub. Right now I have a receipt from the restaurant in the Williamson airport and a receipt from the hotel I stayed in St. Louis that same night. That wouldn't be possible unless I took that flight." Unsettled and on edge from the last few days, I was losing my temper with this fool woman. "Sir, the evening flight was cancelled, and the plane that was due to make that flight was involved in a crash the next morning. You may have heard about it on the news. You can't have been on that flight." The call ended after more confusion and flared tempers, the police called to my home that same day. They came expecting to explain to my wife that unfortunately I was registered as a passenger on the flight, that the burnt remnants of my passport were found at the crash site, and that the only unidentified remains from the 27 passengers on board were likely to be mine. Imagine their surprise when they saw I was at home safe and soon. "And they know you should be here with us," the whispering voice told me, while the officers spoke to my wife and I. Thus, confusion about my status as living or dead began then. Tall records of the unidentified victim were a match to mine. Whilst I still have my driver's license, the picture is an old one, and in the police's view prove nothing. Security camera footage from the airport is no help. I can be clearly seen entering the airport. However, when the announcement about the flight cancellation happens, there is no clear footage of me leaving the airport. I have made various trips to the local police station and was asked to send my ticket stub to Cape Air for verification. They are baffled the stub is real enough, but they insist the flight never took off. Then weeks into the mess, a DNA test was authorized. My DNA was on file due to a program I was in during my time in the Army. I was hoping matters would be cleared up quickly. Unfortunately, it was a catastrophic outcome. Both my own and the unidentified body's DNA are a match to my DNA on military record. My own DNA a 95% match, and the cadaver's a 99% match. Because of his DNA evidence on Tuesday, the 15th of May 2018, I was declared legally dead, and the police immediately opened an investigation into my true identity, the living me that is. Since being declared dead, the voices have become clearer, more frequent. Their tone has changed. The living no longer want you. You are free to join us now. We will come for you soon. We want your warmth. It's so cold I laugh a lot. Laugh to keep me from crying, keep me sane. The world thinks I am dead, and there are voices in my head. My wife has started to look at me strangely. I can see the doubt behind her eyes. It's gone beyond voices now. I see glimpses in shadows and reflections in mirrors, terrible things, burnt and broken, head shivering with cold. Several things trouble me beyond my own sanity. Who is the mysterious charred corpse that has a better genetic claim to my identity than I do? What do I need to do to prove I am alive and who I say I am? The things that troubles me most, though, is my status as one of the dead. If someone who is legally dead is killed, no crime can be committed or even investigated. The voices keep telling me they intend to come and claim me soon. Story 4, Roadrunner. Energy drink study. Our bizarre outlier. I am a researcher for a small team, and now I'm facing a moral dilemma. Over the past year, one of our main projects has been the development of a healthier, more energy-efficient drink named Roadrunner. Upon completion of Roadrunner's formula and design, we contacted a local university and requested to use 100 of their freshmen subjects in a study. The purpose of our study was to compare the alertness of the freshmen and determine if our energy drink positively benefited their college experience. The 100 freshmen were randomly divided into 2 groups. Group 1 received Roadrunner and were requested to drink 1 bottle per day. Group 2 was allowed to drink anything except Roadrunner. We specifically selected freshmen due to the stresses involved in the first year of college. To contribute to the subject's stress levels, we assigned all of them a journal project about adjusting to college. They were required to write 1 entry per day for a total of 14 entries. Our study commenced on August 11th, 2015, and concluded on August 25th, 2015. I will not delve into the intricacies of our data collection and its analysis. For this explanation, I will be straightforward. The benefits of Roadrunner were unanimous. Subjects in Group 1 were significantly more attentive in class, and collectively their journal entries contained a more optimistic tone. The journal entries were one of the many methods of data collection, but I'm emphasizing them for one reason. We hit a minor roadblock due to a subject in Group 1. Across the board, he was an outlier, and, needless to say, he halted our project for several months. The situation is difficult to describe. For that reason, I want to share some of his journal entries. The content of the entries have not been altered. This is how they began. I have never seen my roommate's face, and it makes me believe that he doesn't have one. Benny, he's a real sick fuck. Let me start when I arrived on campus. They were swarming. There were people everywhere. Students, parents, friends, they were rushing all over the place and carrying massive amounts of furniture, suitcases, tacky decorations, you name it. I was standing amid the chaos and struggling to find my residence hall on a school map when a group of guys nearly trampled me. These people were out of their goddamn minds. It took me 3 trips to my car and back to gather all of my belongings. Everything had come down by then, and when I reached my dorm room, I was ready to pass out. I dropped 2 backpacks onto my bed and laid down on the mattress. My gaze drifted to the vacant bed on the opposite side of the room. Benny ASTI. Lines hadn't arrived. Maybe he was late. I tried staying awake for him, but I fell asleep. I woke from the nap a few hours later and glanced over to the empty side of the room. Still, not here. The sun was beginning to set. That's really weird that he wouldn't arrive sooner. I spent the evening putting my room together. I hung my clothes in the bureau and claimed to drawers from the dresser. I decorated my half of the room with posters. I left my textbooks and student paperwork on the desk. Lastly, I hung a calendar above my bed and turned around, expecting my roommate to have arrived. It was dark outside now. Where the hell was he? I booted up my laptop and connected it with the school Wi-Fi. Before I could do anything else, I had to leave for first hall meeting. We were lectured about rules for half an hour. When the meeting finished, all of the guys left in pairs. I supposed that Benny would be arriving later. I just hated for him to be oving in on the first day. I returned to my room and got ready for bed. I was anxious, beyond anxious, for my first day of college. It felt like Christmas Eve. I couldn't sleep if I tried. When the hallway grew quiet, I finally began to doze off. Half asleep, I felt a light tap against the back of my head, and I jerked up so suddenly I smacked my forehead against the headboard. I burst and felt my head beginning to throb. I slid out of bed and shoved the mattress closer to the top of the bed frame. My head must have dipped past the pillow and tapped against the wood. When I felt it, it was one of those knee-jerk reactions. My head ached all night long. By morning, Benny still wasn't there. I didn't have time to worry about him, though. I was rushing around and getting ready for class. I slept a little late and didn't have time to grab breakfast. I just took a Roadrunner drink instead. It was a weird surprise that I had been selected to participate in this study. I didn't mind. It was free smoothies and a cash supplement to my college fund. Who wouldn't love that? I was so busy my first day that I returned to my dorm after dinner. I set down my backpack, shrugged off my shoes, and realized something odd. I was still alone. Benny was nowhere to be found. His side of the room was as empty as before. What was his guy's deal? I ignored the situation, did my homework, and went straight to bed. As soon as started falling asleep, I felt a sharp pat on the top of my head, followed by the shifting of my pillow. I sat upright immediately. Something had touched me. I yanked the pillows back and noticed a dark gap between the mattress and the headboard, the same gap that I had closed last night. I stared at. The gap, but could see nothing. It was as dark as pitch in my room. My eyes weren't adjusting to the darkness. I was too tired for this. I shifted my pillows further down the bed and went back to sleep. By the next morning, I was met with a disturbing surprise. Like yesterday, Benny's side of the room was still empty. However, one of my notebooks was shredded as if a rabid animal had torn it apart. The pages were scattered everywhere. There were only a few pages intact, and they had a message scrawled across them. Don't look. I almost sprinted out of my room in only my underwear. I glanced back to my bed, and within a few moments, I brushed the whole thing off. This had to be hazing. There were upperclassmen living in my hall. That's what it was. I collected he ruined notebook and dumped it into the trash. Then I went about my day without any more surprises. When I returned that evening, I had seemingly forgotten about the incident. My mind was preoccupied with schoolwork. I sat on my bed, did my homework, and crawled under the covers. Just before I fell asleep, I felt the pat again. This pat was longer, though. This one lingered. Was a hand. I shot away from my pillows and scooted to the other side of the bed, breathing heavily. I was petrified. There was something under my fucking bed. A part of me wanted to check while the other wanted to dash out the door. Neither of those sides won. I passed out. The next night I convinced myself that it had been a nightmare. Even with that sentiment in mind, I placed my pillows at the foot of the bed. I fell asleep without the pat, but I was awoken by a massive, painful jerk. It was a sharp tug, grasping my hair and pulling me downward. I woke up in the hallway. I don't remember moving there. I skipped class, went straight to housing, and demanded a room change. I hadn't been sleeping well at all, so I was a bit unreasonable. The woman tried explaining to me multiple times that all the rooms were filled. There was nowhere for me to go. After that, I demanded to know where Benny was. She insisted that we were roommates. A lie pissed me off. It got to the point where she had Benny pulled out of class. Benny was on campus. He had been here the whole fucking time. There had been a discrepancy. Benny's actual roommate. He had my first name too. So Benny accidentally got assigned to both of us. Technically, I had no roommate. I returned to my room and sat on the bed that should have been Benny's bed. I laid there all day, staring at the gap between the tiled floor and the bed frame. I could only remember the note now. Don't look. My door has been locked every night. Nobody else had the key but me. I slept on Benny's bed that night without blankets or pillows. I closed my eyes and started to doze off. Before I could do, I felt the pat on the back of my head. It was sharp boo. Not as angry as the night before. I cried silently. I didn't remember falling asleep. It took me a few nights, but I've learned Benny's rules. He liked my bed, so that's where I slept. It was a routine, and I kept breaking it. Just before I fell asleep, I'd feel him reach up and tap my head to make sure I was there. Benny never made any noise. By following his rules, keeping a gap between the bed frame and the mattress, he was silent. It was just me and Benny. When I behaved, he was very gentle. He had to wish me good night before I could fall asleep. Sometimes Benny would take his time, but that was okay with me. I'd wait all night if I had to. This is where I'm ending the subject's journal. The last few entries are completely incoherent, and I think I should mention that these were typed entries. In particular, the 13th and 14th entries are complete gibberish, as if he violently slapped the keyboard over and over. To some degree, we thought that we were being pranked, but this was no prank. Due to the nature of the entries, we wanted to immediately do a follow-up study. This might sound unprofessional, but the subject resembled the before, and after pictures of meth addiction. His skin was sallow, he was sickly, bony even. He lost an exceptional amount of weight, as if he stopped eating. His face was gaunt with pronounced cheekbones, skin clinging to his skull. There were dark rings around his eyes. He was dazed, staring off into space. Somehow he still functioned, but he was only going through the motions. He didn't respond well when we asked if he was sleeping all right. It alarmed him, distressed him, and nearly sent him into a panic attack. We hardly needed to ask. He hadn't been sleeping. Anyone with eyes could tell you that. Not even a week later, he completely snapped and threw himself from the roof. Nobody knew how he got up there or what was going through his mind. A professor found his crumpled body that morning, and then the authorities were all over the case. It was a mess. We were able to see his dorm room before our team was shut out of the investigation. Our subject didn't leave a suicide note. No, he left an entire wall filled with frenzied messages. The predominant message was he's always watching. All of the messages overlapping each other, all disjointed thoughts. After nearly being sued, my team is fed up with the matter. They threw out the subject's data and blamed confounding variables for the extreme response. Regardless, he was an outlier in the grand scheme of things. An outlier is not representative of the whole. For that reason, Roadrunner is proceeding with its production and will be released for public consumption. Within the month, Story 5, Arrogance, won by when the gravel rocks were kicked up off the road. He was half, maybe 3/4 of a mile from the house. He felt something fall out of his pocket, but he didn't care. All that he cared about was getting away from that thing. It was hopeless, though, and he knew this. No matter what happened, it would get him. He's always hated this town. James Vaughn, an investigative journalist from a small town in Georgia, hates people that believe in paranormal entities. And this town is full of them. Every story you hear in this town is about ghosts, demons, or other nonsense, and he has to pretend that he believes in it, or else he wouldn't have a job writing articles about the town. After all, pretending isn't so much of a big deal when it pays the bills. Jim sat in his office, looking out his open window as all the bright orange and yellow leaves fall from the trees, smelling that autumn air, and listening to the slight breeze shake the smaller trees. He looked at his watch and saw that it was 7:03, meaning he forgot his daily coffee, which smells of milk and honey and has too many sugar packets in it. Knowing that this might totally mess up the rest of his predictably terrible day, he got up to get it late, but was stopped by a sudden voice. Jim, he heard Mr. O'Connell, his boss, call next to his office. There's been another disappearance of the teenagers near the old abandoned manor uptown. Police aren't going to show up until they finished searching through the city. So you better leave quick, or else you won't have a chance with the first perspective. Everybody around here believes it was a ghost kidnapping. If you want a good paycheck this week, I'd go up to that manor and snoop around a little bit, write about what you see. James doesn't mind Mr. O'Connell. He doesn't treat him bad, and he's not a believer of everything he hears. Like James, he does give all of the dangerous stories to James, though maybe because he can write a great article, or maybe because everyone else will be too scared to do it. Whatever the reason, Jim doesn't care. All of this paranormal mumbo-jumbo doesn't hesitate him a bit. As he left the office, he felt a cold chill run through his body. He shrugged this off, putting blame on the fall when he opened up his car and sat down on the soft leather seats. He just bought this car within the month, so the soft seats still surprise him. Every time he gets in, he turned the radio to the classic station and tapped the beat to all the symphonies on the wheel. As he made the 2-hour-long drive through the woods, he finally found the manor, which was about half a mile from a paved road. The half-mile dirt road was very bumpy, and his inhaler flew out of his pocket during his drive on the road. He then saw a car parked at the end of the road and realized he was at the manor. The old manor was a horrifying display of architecture. There were turns and twists all along the outside of the rooms. There were doors to the outside 30 feet in the air, and perhaps more terrifying of all, every single window of the house was broken. Jim has never once felt like something was this wrong. While he doesn't believe in the idea of entities and ghosts, something was most definitely wrong with this house. He was about to go into his car and leave, but then he smelled something that made his face clench and his stomach clench tighter. If he could describe it in one word, it would be evil. But James didn't want superstition to overcome him, so he decided to go through with the story. The front door was locked, unsurprisingly, so he climbed through a crater that was once a window. The smell was even stronger in here. He raised his shirt over his nose, but to no avail. The inside of the house was even worse than the outside. The old Kenwood creaked and cracked with each step. The dust in the air made every breath harder and harder, especially because of his asthma. Good thing he brought his inhaler. He made his way into what he figured was the living room and took a look around. He saw a piece of paper laying on the old broken coffee table. The words were written in permanent marker and stretched across the whole page. Get out. The paper looked very old, like the note was written several years ago. Those awful words told him everything he thought of this place was true. But pride is a terrible thing, and Jim's pride always got its way. Jim was always told that someday his arrogance would be the death of him, but, ironically, he was too arrogant to listen. He knew that something was wrong, but once again he vowed to never let superstition get the best of him. He made his way through the living room, which was the biggest living room he's ever seen. There were lanterns on the wall, so he didn't need to use his flashlight. The living room was full of furniture, but it was all decomposed or broken. The chairs looked recently broken, but Jim couldn't tell whether it was from prolonged use or bugs and animals. He pulled out his phone and checked to see whether he had service or not, and he didn't. He kept his phone out anyway to video record all of his findings. After completely searching the living room, he found the scent getting worse and worse. He decided to find where the smell was coming from, and decided to go upstairs of the 14 steps leading up the staircase. 3 were broken. Jim took note of this just in case something happened. The rest were barely more durable, with strands of wood snapping with each step. Each step sounded hollow, like there was nothing underneath the stairs. The aroma up there was unbearable, almost as if dead bodies and waste filled the upstairs. He was wrong, though. There was no waste there. 3 dead bodies scattered around the room. He recognized 2 of them right away. They were the missing teenagers. The other one, he had no idea who that was, but he seemed at least a decade older. The bodies were mangled and were full of nothing but claw marks, bites, and pockets of ripped-off skin. The smell and sight were so awful that the vomit he threw up next to the body looked like $1,000,000. He figured it was maybe a wild animal or a pack of them, but deep down he knew it was something exponentially more terrifying. James noticed something. One of them had their phone next to their body, as if it fell out of their hand or pocket. He picked it up and turned it on. No passcode. Good. Jim unlocked it and was welcomed by a picture of the 2 teenagers, smiling and happy, having no idea about the horrors that would soon be upon them. They were both boys who looked similar. They were probably brothers. It's a shame. They had their whole lives ahead of them. He looked at the recent messages on the phone and found out a lot. The one who owned the phone, his name was Danny, was a 17-year-old junior who had a deep relationship with his brother, Clyde. Apparently, Clyde had met some homeless person named Greg, who told him a fantastic story about a supposedly haunted manor. While Danny didn't want to go, Clyde assured him over that nothing bad would happen, so they decided to take their car and drive up to the manor. The trip was planned for yesterday. He then looked through the gallery of the phone. There were 3 videos. All of them he noticed were inside the house. He turned on the first video and saw Danny and Greg dancing around the living room, laughing and mocking the house. For example, you could hear Danny yell out, "Sorry, ghost, I didn't mean to disturb you. Please don't beat me to death," and then laugh out loud for several seconds. He knew that this video did not explain a thing, so he clicked on the next video. The second video was frightening. The video started off with them standing where their motionless cadavers now lay. Their faces were much less happy and carefree. They were in complete disbelief. Danny was struggling with words, eventually sputtering out that they should leave. As they turned to go back down the stairs, all he could hear were screams. 3-0. F them from the video, one from him. As the video was ending, he saw a creature, and it was massive. It was walking on 2 legs. It looked around medium height. It was very hairy. Its muscles were bulging and pulsating as if they were about to pop out of the skin, and it had a blood-curdling smile with several rows of fanged teeth. Go, get out, right now. Don't watch the last video. Just get out. He ran down the stairs, phone in hand, and got his leg stuck in the missing step. As his leg fell through the step, the phone bounced out, and the video started playing. Screams were blaring out from the phone, and a loud growl. The video was only about 15 seconds, and it ended with a bloody Danny ailing, "If you are in this house, get the H&T." And you could hear a thump, along with the body and phone smacking off the floor, somehow having the stop button being pressed on the way down. As the phone went to the ground, he could once again see the thing. His time it was attacking Clyde with one hand and biting and strangling Greg with his other massive hand. He pried his leg out of the gaping hole, not caring that it was bruising and bleeding. He carefully walked down the rest of the stairs and heard a low snarl. James froze, terrifyingly knowing what was happening. He heard the floor above his head pounding. He sprinted out of the sty ray and made his way into the living room. He put his hand into his pocket and frantically searched for his keys. He realized they were in his car and jumped through the window hole with surprising athleticism. He bolted to his car and went to open the door. Locked. Just his luck. He tried the passenger door. Locked. The trunk locked. He tried the back door on the passenger side and heard a door blast open. Not the car door, the manor door. He saw the creature's smile. James ran down the road and didn't look back. One by one the gravel rocks were kicked up off the road. He was maybe 3/4 of a mile from the house. He felt something fall out of his pocket, but he didn't care. All that he cared about was getting away from that thing. It was hopeless, though, and he knew this. No matter what happened, it would get him about 4 minutes into his run. He started struggling for air. An asthma attack. He quickly reached into his pocket and his inhaler was the thing that fell out at the beginning. He started crying, knowing it was inevitable. As he fell on the ground, struggling for air and coughing, he saw a figure walk into his view. After about 30 seconds, he could hear the growl. A minute after that, he saw the smile. He's getting closer now, and no car is coming down this road. Story 6. We watch you sleep. Pay. Opal are suing about everything these days. I remember hearing about that direct marketing company Monat getting a class action lawsuit against them because their beauty products were making hair fall out instead of making it look nicer. Kind of a problem when your product does the opposite of what's supposed to happen, but that's just it. Hair care products are one thing. You can just switch to another brand, but let me tell you to be careful. There are some things that, when you buy them, you can't get rid of so easily. I recently got laid off, and being the sort of tie-in seeker who posts up everything, I let everyone on Facebook know about it. Most of the people who responded were well-wishers. A couple of people offered to get my foot in the door at their company, but most just ignored me a few days after my post. though. I got a private message from an old high school friend I hadn't seen in years. He said if I needed money quick, I should do direct mark T stuff for Panoptics. I'd heard about them before, a local security company who set up a couple of places in my neighborhood. They were relatively new, cashing in on the whole wireless security craze. But I didn't think there was anything else special about what they did. My friend said he had gotten his system put in a little while ago, and that he was really happy with it, and that the installer was looking for new people to help him take care of some of the demand. I asked how I could call, and he said not to worry. He had the guy's number. He'd tell him to call me and get a meeting. A few days later, I got the call, and the installer, Jimmy, said he'd be happy to come ask me some questions, demonstrate how everything worked, and if it all went well, he'd get me on the payroll by the end of the week. I said that would be great. When could he come by? He said in a few hours he'd be free, and that was that. Jimmy came to my door in the middle of the afternoon, and he seemed friendly enough. Big smile, strong handshake, sat down in my kitchen, talked about how being secure in your own home was a great thing. He brought out a big folder filled with pamphlets, lines talking about the marvels of a wireless security system and the benefits it offered, plus the 24-hour security crew who would contact me if anything was detected. That was their motto. After all, we watch you sleep. It all looked legitimate enough. With that out of the way, Jimmy started the interview. It wasn't much of one. Pretty much all he needed from me was if I had ever sold stuff before. Did I have a car? I did. And could I be counted on to upsell the top-line stuff to people? I was a little iffy, but I wasn't going to turn down a job offer like this. He seemed very happy when I said I was ready to go, and then he showed me how to install the system for people. Folks, let me tell you, anybody could have installed this thing. It seemed like a racket to go around and charge people to do it. But when I heard how much the first paycheck would be, even before commission, I was hooked. Just call me Master Installer. Jimmy went to his van and brought in a bunch of boxes of full systems, a lead list, his business card, and told me to get cracking. Well, he did say it nicer than that, but that was the gist. To test it all. But before I went and did a bunch of other houses, I pulled out one box and set up a system in my own house. I'd never been too concerned with security, but I will admit it was a snazzy looking setup. It had a kind of retro 80s feel to it, but the 80s was still kind of cool to remember anyway, so maybe it would make some of my friends jealous. Now that I knew what I was doing, I called a couple of places on his lead list where he got it. I didn't know, but that was his own business, and found a few that would I bite. I went in, gave a sales pitch, and bing, in went the system. It was remarkably easy, and when it was done, a lot of people were really happy with the way it looked and worked. I got for systems done before I began to notice something was a little odd. First, I called Jimmy's phone number, but I could never get through. It was always a busy signal. Nobody ever has a busy signal anymore. But I tried writing to his email, wondering when I would be getting paid. I did get a response there, saying he'd be sending me a note shortly, but he didn't go into any more detail than that. I got a call a few nights later, and by night I mean I was woken up at 3 in the morning. I recognized the number. It was one of the people I had installed for, a guy named Stan, who lived alone except for his fairly extensive comic collection. I asked him what he wanted. I tell you, I'll never forget that conversation. Please help me. I'm not the help desk. You have to call the number on your I'm calling you. There's something in my house. Something, not somebody. Something again. I'm not the help desk won't answer. The help desk wouldn't answer. That was odd or terrible customer service. Then you should call the police. I'm just the installer. The police won't answer. It's like my phone won't work. You're the only person I can reach. I go. Helped? What can I do? Call the police for me. Call somebody, anybody, please. Where is the person in your house? How did they break in? And then it was what he said next that made me truly scared. It didn't break in. It was already here. It was watching me sleep. That was the last I heard from Stan, or at least the last conversation I had ever heard as he said that last sentence. There was a terrifying screech, almost a roar, and I heard Stan screaming. The screaming turned into gurgles, then wet, horrible noises, then silence. Then something breathed heavily into the phone, and it up. I didn't sleep at all the rest of the night. I don't know why, but despite my new security system, I didn't feel safe. I called the police, who did respond to my relief, and I told them everything I could about Stan. I sat in the kitchen, drinking coffee, until they called back. I didn't get all the details, but I heard enough from the sound of it. Stan had been attacked by a wild animal. That was their best guess anyway, as there was a lot of blood and not much of him left to tell exactly what happened. A wild animal, that was all well and good, except somebody hung up that phone. I called Jimmy. No answer. As usual, I then called Panoptics directly and asked if they had a special number where I could reach Jimmy. And that was when I got the worst news of all. Panoptics had no idea who Jimmy was. They didn't have installers. They were a do-it-yourself company and did all their business by internet mail order. If there was no Jimmy, then who the hell did I bring into my home? I went back to Facebook and messaged my friend who'd sent Jimmy to me in the first place. I wanted to warn him that Jimmy was a fraud. He wasn't a real installer, but I got no response. Nothing. I feared the worst. He didn't live far from me, an apartment building a few cities over, so I drove out there. It was Getty on toward night when I got there, and I knocked. No answer. I went to the apartment office and to get the super, who complained a little about the commotion, but admitted he hadn't seen much of my friend lately. He opened the door, and the stench that came at us was enough to make it clear something was not well in there. The super went to call the cops, but even from the door I could see enough. From the hall I had a pretty good view into the living room. A couch sat in front of a TV, which was switched on and playing prime-time shows, and from that light I could see a hand on the floor. Just a hand, nothing else. The only other thing I noticed in the room was the faint glow of a Panoptic's central security tower. The rest of the system appeared to have been smashed into pieces. I stuck around until the cops arrived, though it wasn't until a few days later I got the whole story. What was left of him had been determined to have been dead for at least 3 weeks. It sounded a lot like the way Stan had been killed. Vicious, nasty mutilation, possibly by a wild animal. But it was the 3 weeks that got me. That meant the private message I had received had come after his death. Since then, I've learned a little more about Jimmy, or whatever his real name is. Other people have seen him, recruiting them to help them install security systems, using the names of other local companies. He's been all over the country, at least. That's what I hope. Internet chat rooms keep asking questions about him, and pictures they post show the guy who idly came into my house, but things don't add up. If what everyone says can be believed, he has been into states simultaneously, recruiting people in the same day, while magically moving around the country. It's either that or he has a bunch of twin brothers. I don't know which would be worse. So, if someone you know tries to tell you to do installation work for a security company, be sure to call the company first. If a guy shows up with a friendly smile and a strong handshake, don't just say yes. I don't know how I can prove anything I've said to anybody. The only thing I can say is that I am writing this from a library computer. I can't do it from home. In fact, there's a lot I can't do there. My phone stopped working properly anytime I try to call anyone and talk to them about my concerns. My phone sends me to a busy signal even when I'm not at home. My computer's internet sometimes won't go to certain sites. I don't dare stay at a friend's house. I don't know if anything will happen to them. All I know is IT will know. I don't know what IT is. I never see it, but I can sense its presence. I go to sleep, and in the middle of the night, I sometimes wake up and know it's there. I know it came with that security system. I cannot get rid of it. I cannot talk about it at home, or else it will do to me what it did to Stan and my old friend, and I've brought it, or things just like it, into the homes of 3 other people. I sleep, it watches ... Story 7, Kisaragi Station, a 2 Chainz story from 2004. Posted in the middle of a thread called Post About Strange Occurrences Around You. Thread 26. The poster was anonymous at first, but started attaching their name later. For your convenience, hash and Hasumi indicate posts made by the thread creator. Hashtag to CH indicates a post made by any other Tichin user. They are not all the same person. Please enjoy this story. This may just be my imagination. Can I pause? It anyway. Hashtag to CH go ahead. Hashtag to CH what's going on. I've been riding a certain train for a while, but something seems off. To CH I always take this train to work, but it hasn't stopped at any stations for the past 20 minutes or so. It usually only takes 5 minutes, 7 or 8 at worst. Oh, and there's 5 other passengers, but they're all sleeping. Hashtag to CH. Did you take the express train by mistake? Hashtag to CH. Is it a high-speed train? Well, it's possible I may have just missed my stop. I'll wait a little longer. If anything else strange occurs, I might bring it up here. Hashtag to CH. Try going to the car on the end to see the conductor. Maybe. Hashtag to CH. It would be really bad if the driver had an epileptic fit or something. You should check on the conductor. Still not sign of stopping. So all right, I'll take a look. Hash, there were blinds or something covering the window, so I couldn't see the conductor or the driver. The route is a private railway in Shizuoka. Hashtag to CH knock on the window. Hasumi, I tried that, but nobody answered. Hashtag to CH, can you see out the window? Names of stations you're passing, etc. Hasumi, we came out a tunnel, so we're dropping speed slightly. There usually aren't any tunnels, though. It's a train from Shinhamamatsu. Hasumi, looks like we're finally stopping at a station. Hashtag to CH, you aren't going to get off there, are you? Hasumi, we're stopped at Kisaragi Station. I wonder if I should get off. I've never heard of this place before. To change, definitely check it out. Hashtag to CH, no, stay O. And until the last stop. Hashtag to CHO, but it's probably already departing now. Hashtag to CH, when did you get on the train? Hasumi, I have gotten off the train. The station's unmanned. I believe IG. OT on the train at 11:40. To change, I'm not finding any information on Kisaragi Station. And Hasumi, your train was going for over an hour. Well, that's really strange. Hashtag to CH, yeah, I'm not getting any results for Kisaragi Station. Hasumi, I'm looking for a schedule so I can get back, but I can't find one. The train is still stopped, so it'd probably be safest to get back on. Well, it left while I was writing that. Hashtag to CH, is there anyone nearby or any buildings? It's cold out, so be careful. Hasumi, I'll look for a taxi from the station. Thank you very much. Hashtag to CH, sounds good. Take care. To change, way past the last train at an unmanned station. Really questionable if you'll have any luck finding a taxi there. To change, and so Hasumi became an inhabitant of the two-dimensional world Hasum. There don't seem to be any taxis anywhere. Hashtag to CH, call 110, number for police. To change, call the taxi company. Hashtag to CH, if there's a telephone booth nearby. Look up the taxi company in the phone book and call. Hasumi, I called home and asked to be picked up, but neither of my parents seem to know where Kisaragi Station is. They'll look for it on the map so they can come get me, but I'm getting a little scared now. Hashtag to CH, what about the others? Are you the only one who got off the train? To change, I checked online too. And the name Kisaragi Station isn't coming up. Am I wrong in assuming it's around Shinhamamatsu? I'll check Yahoo. Hasumi, I looked for a public phone, but there's nothing, and no one else got off. So I'm alone now. It's definitely called Kiss Aragi. Hashtag to CH, sometimes they have phones outside the station. Hasumi, looking into it. Apparently, it's written with the kanji, or devil, but it's read Kisaragi hash to CH Devil Station. Yikes. Hashtag to CH, are you a gaming nerd? 'Cause a game comes up if you Google it. Hashtag to CH, tell us the names of the stations before and after Kisaragi. Hasumi, what do you mean, a game? It doesn't say what the next T and previous stations are. Hashtag to CH, walk back along the track. To change, if you start running now, you might catch up to the train. To change, there must be houses around the station, right? Hasumi, yes, the rear. I didn't quite notice since I was panicking. I'm waiting for my parents to call. I'm walking along the track. I tried checking town information on iMode, but it gave me a point error or something. I want to go home. Hasumi, there's really just nothing around here. All I can see are fields and mountains. But I think I'll be able to make it back if I go down the track, so I'll keep pushing on. Thank you very much. Treat this as a joke, if you will, but can I come to you if I encounter any more trouble? To chains, of course. Just be careful out there. Hashtag to CH, sure. Just make sure you don't run out of battery. Your phone's your lifeline. Right now, hashtag to CH, don't get lost. And be careful in the tunnel. To chains, you can get a signal out in the middle of nowhere, IK. And to think you shouldn't stray far from the station. Hashtag to CH all alone on a cold night at a station with no attendants. Soon the lights could go out and it'll be pitch black. Hashtag to CH it really meg. HT be safest to wait for daybreak at the station though. Hashtag to CH, oh geez, this sounds bad. Hasumi, I got a call from my father, and he had many questions, but simply couldn't find my location. I've been told to call 110, which I'm a little opposed to doing, but I'll try asking them to help me now. Hashtag to CH, I really think you should wait until it gets lighter out before you do anything. Hashtag to CH, waiting all alone in the dead of night. And in some ominous place, yikes. Hashtag to CH, going through a tunnel alone in the dead of night. And on some ominous train line, yikes. Hasumi, I led 110 and tried my absolute best to explain the situation, but they thought it was all a joke and got angry at me. So I got scared and apologized. To chains apologized for what should probably give up for today, wait for the first train. Hashtag to CH, what's it like around the station? What's there? Hasumi, I hear what sounds like a beating drum mixed with some kind of bell way off in the distance. Once,ly, I have no idea what to do at this point. To chains, get back to the station for now. Hasumi, it's best to return to where you started when you're lost. Hashtag to CH, here's where it gets going. Hashtag to CH, are they having a festival or what? Hasumi, you might think I'm kidding, but I'm too scared to look behind me. I do want to go back to the station, but I don't dare turn around. Hashtag to CH, run, and don't look back. Hashtag to CH, you can't go back to the station now. Run through the tunnel. I'm sure you'll find you're not far. Hasumi, someone behind me yelled, hey, don't walk on the track. That's dangerous. I looked around expecting to see an attendant and saw an one-legged old man, but he vanished. I think I'm too scared to move. Hashtag to CH, I told you not to look back. Run. Hashtag to CH, calm down and listen to Big Bro. Okay, check out where that drum's coming from. There's bound to be somebody playing it. To chains, where the hell are you planning to take Hasumi? Hashtag to CH, why'd you know it was an old man if it was just a single leg? Hashtag to CH, I think Hasumi meant an old man who lost one of his legs. Hashtag to CH, must have been an old man who died and lost a leg after walking along the track. Hasumi, I can't walk or run any further. The drumming sound is getting a little closer. To chains, wait for dawn. It won't be scary in the daylight. Hashtag to CH, I am glad I stayed and the train. Hasumi, I'm still alive. But I fell and started bleeding, and I broke a heel. So I'm sitting still on the ground. I don't want to die now. Hashtag to CH, it should be safe if you leave the tunnel. Once you get out of there, call for help immediately. Hasumi, I called home. Dad's calling the police, but the sound keeps getting closer. Hash to ch, I hope to God that's not the sound of a train, but it might be too late. Asumi, I finally managed to make it to the front of the tunnel. The name says Isanuki. The sound's still getting closer, so I'm going to leave the tunnel. If I am safe once I get out of the tunnel, I'll post again. Hashtag to ch, good luck. To change this is the end. Forget about trains and stations. Forget about going back. Forget about someone chasing you. The sound you're hearing is just something you imagine. Run out of the tunnel. If you stop, you'll only succumb to something which does not belong in this world. Hasumi, I left the tunnel. There's someone up ahead. It looks like all your advice was right after all. Thank you so much. My face is such a mess from tears. He might just mistake me for a monster. Hashtag to ch, wait, Hasumi. Don't die on us. Hashtag to ch, stop. That can't be good. Hashtag to ch, someone there this late at night. That's suspicious. Hasumi seems gentle and was worried for me. He called for a train to take me to the nearest station. Apparently there's some kind of business hotel there. I'm truly thankful to all of you. Hashtag to ch, Hasumi. Please answer me this one thing. Can you ask that man what that place is? Hashtag to ch, is he really gentle? He sounds kinda scary from what you said. Hashtag to ch, that guy's no good. Why is he by the track at this hour? He must have been a corpse or something. Hasumi. Run? Hasumi, I asked him where it was, and he said Hinat. That seems extremely unlikely, though. Hashtag to ch, Hasumi. Get off the train. Hashtag to ch, excuse me. Hasumi. Where's Hina? Hasumi, we've been headed toward the mountains for some time. It really doesn't strike me as a place where trains would go. And he's stopped talking to me entirely. Hashtag to ch, probably because you're constantly messing with your phone. Hashtag to ch, Hasu. Me, oh no. Did you contact your parents after you got out of the tunnel and received aid from this guy? Hashtag to ch, Hasumi. Please call 110. This might be your last chance. Hasumi, my battery has almost run out. Things are getting strange, so I think I'm going to make a run for it. He's been talking to himself about bizarre things for a while now. To prepare for just the right time, I'm going to make this my last post for now. Asterisk afterward. Hasumi was never heard from again.